Today's video is actually inspired by one of my students who was going through some pencils and she found an H pencil. And this is brand new information to her. And she's like, what does this mean? What is an H pencil? How is that different to my usual B pencils? That's what we're going to talk about today. So graphite pencils, also known as lead pencils. I might just get my hair out of here. Also, sorry if you hear other things on the mic, it is also raining. So these pencils are very, very common. They can be extremely cheap and very expensive. The basic composition of any sort of graphite pencil is graphite and clay. So when you're talking about B versus H, that just describes how much graphite versus clay is in the pencil. So B stands for black, and black is also softer. So that's why when you get your 2B, 4B, 6B and up, the lead gets blacker, darker and softer. H stands for hardness. So that's why those pencils, they have more clay in them versus the graphite. So the lead or the graphite is actually harder, and it's a lot lighter as well because it hasn't got as much graphite in the pencil, it's more clay. And what I've got holding in my hand right now, these are actually all different HB pencils, HB. So this is the most common type of pencil. These are the ones that have the eraser on the bottom there, and that basically stands for hard black. Okay, it's hard black and it's sort of like a nice little medium pencil. So that's probably why it's the most common. But there are lots of different types that you can get, lots of different brands. They're not all equal. So when you're looking for pencils, I would generally advise you to try and get either the middle or the upper range in terms of price. Because what I find with some of these cheaper pencils, and sorry Marbig, but this is a good example, they break and they don't just sort of like shatter all the way through, but even when you're trying to sharpen them, the lead, it just pops out and you can't use it. And so buying cheap pencils isn't really going to do you any favors. So let's just go through some quick pros and cons of B versus H pencils. So like I said earlier on, B stands for blackness, and those leads tend to be a lot softer. So because they're softer, you can smudge them out, you can do some nice little tonal variations with them, depending on how light or heavy that you press on the page with the pencil. This also means that they are a little bit easier to control, because if you go very lightly, you can get a nice light line or some nice tone. The next big pro for the B-type pencils is that they're very common. They are so common. Like, this is the most common type of pencil. They're very cheap, easy to get pretty much anywhere. You can go to your local supermarket and get these pencils. But here's a con. B pencils can sometimes be difficult to erase. So if you make a bit of a mistake and you want to get rid of it, you won't necessarily be able to erase all of the work that you've done. This is why I always tell my students, go lightly, just light as a feather. Light as a feather on your page, because if you don't, it just worlds of strife. But what about H? Let's go through some pros and cons with H pencils. So my first pro would be that because the lead is so light, it can be really good to use these pencils for line work, like your initial sketching and line work, if you know what you're doing with it and you can control it. The lead has more clay in it, you can get much finer points, and it can be really great to do strands of hair. Here's another pro, is that with an H pencil, the lead can actually stay sharper for longer. This is because it has more clay in it versus graphite, but there are some cons with these pencils, and these are really important ones to keep in mind. Because an H pencil is more of a specialist pencil, it's not as common. You're not going to find it as easily as you would a B. So you might have to go to art shops in particular to actually get these pencils, or look for them online. The other thing, and this is kind of a major con and why H pencils aren't used as often, they can actually damage your paper. Because an H lead has more clay in it, it's a lot harder, and they stay sharper for longer, they will actually end up scratching and denting and marking your page permanently. So then even if you rub it out, you've still got a mark there and you can't get rid of it. So this can come down to your control over your tool, how well you can control it, how heavy or lightly that you're pressing on your paper. What do you reckon? Have you used B's and H's before? I'd be especially interested to hear if you have used H pencils in the past or if you love using them right now. Tell me down in the comments below, and guys, we'll be back next week. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. We'll see you then. Bye.